There is a specific feeling that comes with having a credit score you're not proud of. It's not just worry about money. It's something closer to being caught. Like that number is a record of something you'd rather no one knew about. And the strange part is that this feeling doesn't go away when you learn more about credit scores. It doesn't go away when you make a plan. It doesn't go away most of the time until someone explains what that number is actually measuring. Because here is what almost no one tells you clearly. The credit score is not measuring what you think it's measuring. It is not a judgment of your character. It is not a record of your financial intelligence. It is not evidence of whether you are a responsible adult. And by the end of this video, that distinction is going to feel different than it does right now. Not because the number will have changed, because what it means will have. So let's talk about where that feeling actually came from. Anyone who's been carrying this knows the exact moment it changed. When the number stopped being a financial metric and became something else, something that felt personal. For most people in this situation, it didn't happen all at once. It happened gradually through a series of moments where money was hard and the score reflected that hardness. And then at some point, the score and the shame became the same thing. The student loan payment that was late during the month, everything else was also late. The card that crept up because the alternative was not eating. The account that went to collections from a version of your life you've since left behind. Each of those events was real. Each of them showed up in a number. And somewhere along the way, that number started to feel like a verdict. Here's what's actually happening when that happens. The brain is very efficient at building narratives from evidence. And when the evidence keeps pointing in one direction, a score that doesn't reflect where you think you should be, the brain does what brains do. It finds the simplest explanation. This number is low because of something about me. That explanation makes complete sense. Given the evidence, it also happens to be wrong. Not wrong in the way that feels like reassurance. Don't be so hard on yourself. Wrong in a specific, factual, verifiable way. And the difference between those two things, between empty reassurance and accurate information, is exactly what this video is about. No wonder the number has the weight it has. You were given a data point and no context for what it measures. That's not a failure of intelligence. That's a failure of explanation. Now, here is what a FICO score actually is. It is a number between 300 and 850 produced by an algorithm. That algorithm was built by a company, Fair Isaac Corporation, which is where the name FICO comes from. And its sole purpose is to predict one specific thing. How likely are you to repay a loan on time in the next 24 months? That's it. That is the entire question the algorithm is trying to answer. It uses 5 inputs to generate its answer. Payment history, whether you've paid on time, makes up 35% of the score. How much of your available credit you're currently using makes up another 30%. The length of your credit history accounts for 15%. The mix of credit types you have, cards, loans, mortgage, accounts for 10%. And new credit applications, the hard inquiries, make up the remaining 10%. Now here's the part that matters. Look at what is not on that list. Your income is not on that list. How hard you've worked is not on that list. Whether the circumstances that led to a late payment were within your control, not on the list. Whether you've paid thousands of dollars in interest on a debt that barely moved, not on the list. Whether the reason your utilization is high is because your credit limit is low, not because your spending is out of control, not on the list. The algorithm does not know your story. It cannot know your story. It processes a narrow set of behavioral signals and produces a number. And here is the evidence anchor that most people never hear. Research consistently shows that roughly 1 in 4 credit reports contains errors, mistakes made by the bureaus themselves or by creditors who reported information incorrectly. 1 in 4, which means there is a meaningful chance that some portion of the number you've been carrying as a verdict was never accurately yours to begin with. This is not a discipline problem. It is a data problem, and data problems have specific solutions. So what actually happened to a lot of people whose score doesn't reflect who they are? They took out student loans at 18, when no one clearly explained what compound interest means over a 20-year repayment, or what the monthly payment would actually cost on a $42,000 salary. They graduated into a job market, or a cost of living, or a health situation that did not cooperate with the plan that made sense on paper. They missed payments during months when missing payments was the least bad option available. They avoided looking at their credit report, not out of laziness, but because looking felt like confirmation of something they didn't want confirmed. And then the avoidance made things worse. and the shame made the avoidance stronger. And at no point did anyone name what was happening clearly enough for them to interrupt it. Here is the thing that changes when you understand what the score actually measures. The score is not a record of who you are. It is a compressed data point about a specific set of past behaviors, many of which had real explanations, run through an algorithm that was not designed to care about context. It measures what happened. It does not measure what you're capable of. Anyone who's been carrying this knows the difference between those two things in their body, even if they couldn't name it before. The low score happened because of real events. The student loan reporting restart that added delinquencies to millions of credit files in 2024, including people who had no idea that grace period was ending. The utilization ratio that climbed because interest rates climbed. And the minimum payment logic of credit cards is designed to keep balances growing, not shrinking. The error that showed up on a report and stayed there because disputing errors is a process no one explains until you need it. These are not excuses. They are inputs. And the thing about inputs is that they can change. This is not who you are. This is what happened to you in a system that was never designed to tell the difference. And understanding that, really understanding it, not just being told to feel better about it, is the first real shift. Because you cannot act clearly on something you believe is evidence of a fundamental flaw, but you can act on data. For anyone who wants to take what's here further, past the reframe and into the actual sequence of what to do, in what order, with what realistic timeline. There's a guide in the description built specifically for this. It walks through the credit repair process without the shame spiral, the exact steps, the right order, and what to realistically expect at each stage. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Now, here is what the algorithm responds to. Not effort, not intention, not how many times you've promised yourself you'd deal with this. Specific inputs, in a specific order of leverage. Payment history is 35% of the score, which makes it the highest leverage input by a significant margin. That means one thing more than anything else. Any account that is currently past due is the first priority, not the largest balance. Not the most embarrassing debt. The one that is actively accruing delinquency right now. Bringing a past due account current or setting up a payment plan that stops the active damage matters more to the number than almost anything else you could do. The second input at 30% is utilization. How much of your available credit you're using. The algorithm responds well to any movement downward here, even small movement. If a card is at 90% utilization and you bring it to 75%, the score notices. If you have a card with available space and you're not using it, that available space is working for you right now, whether you realized it or not. The third input, length of credit history at 15%, is the one that most rewards doing nothing harmful. Closing old accounts to feel cleaner often backfires here. An old card with a zero balance and no annual fee, left open and unused, is doing quiet structural work on your score. The fourth and fifth inputs, credit mix and new inquiries, matter less and require less active management. What they do tell you, applying for multiple new accounts in a short window creates hard inquiries that temporarily lower the score. One application considered is very different from several at once. And then there is the error question. 1 in 4 credit reports contains an error. Some of those errors are minor. Some of them are the reason a score is lower than it should be. A paid account still showing as unpaid, a debt that belongs to someone else, a late payment that was never actually late. The only way to know whether your report contains an error is to look at it, not at your score, at the actual report. The full report from all 3 bureaus is available free once a year at annualcreditreport.com. One step, not a system. Go there, request your report, look for the one item that seems wrong or that you don't recognize. That is today's step. Not a plan, not a commitment. One look, one item. That is what real movement looks like from here. If what's here opens something you want to go deeper on, the full sequence, the timeline, the decision tree for which debt to address first. The credit repair playbook in the description was built for exactly this moment. Link in the description and the pinned comment. What was the moment your credit score stopped feeling like a number and started feeling like something personal? And do you remember what changed? So here is what's true now that wasn't fully named when this started. The credit score is a predictive algorithm. It takes 5 specific inputs, runs them through a model designed to forecast one specific behavior, and produces a 3-digit number. It does not know what year it was when the payment was late. It does not know what the choice was between. It does not know whether the debt came from a medical bill or a job loss or a period of life that no longer represents who you are. It knows payment patterns, utilization ratios, account age, the shame that got attached to that number, the feeling of being caught, of being found out, of having a record that confirms the worst thing you've thought about yourself. That shame came from a story that made complete sense, given the evidence. And the story was, this number is proof of something wrong with me. Here is the more accurate story. This number is a data point about a specific set of past events, many of which had real explanations, in a system that was never designed to distinguish between someone who didn't try and someone who was trying in circumstances the algorithm cannot see. That distinction matters, not because it makes the number disappear, because you cannot build anything from a place of verdict. You can only defend against it, or hide from it, or carry it, but from a place of data. Data that is incomplete, data that contains a specific set of inputs, data that responds to specific actions in a specific order. From that place, movement is possible. The one step for this week, go to annualcreditreport.com. Request your free report from all 3 bureaus. Look at it, not to feel terrible about it, but to understand what it actually contains. Find one item that looks wrong, or that you don't recognize, or that you want to understand. Write it down. That is the step, not a system, not a promise. One step. The person who watched this far already knows more than they did before. They know what the score is actually measuring. They know it isn't them. That's not a small thing. That's the part that changes first.